Alright guys, welcome back to RoxomTV and also welcome back to GemGem Crypto. Whichever platform you're watching on, I hope you guys are hanging on there because there are many and when I say many, like bearish narratives that we're seeing. Because from what I've seen yesterday, US is apparently trying to go to war with Venezuela. Of course, this is going to be ultra bad, ultra bearish for the market, but what we've seen from the gold price and silver price is they are skyrocketing, and of course, oil price because Venezuela is one of the biggest and richest country in the world with all the oil supply among the whole world. So, of course, there's whenever there's uncertainty in the market, people like to flop from risk on asset to so-called risk-off asset, aka gold, aka silver, but not Bitcoin. So Bitcoin is crashing, but of course, this is not the only reason. We touched upon that in yesterday's show a little bit. We talk about the AI bubble, and it looks like the AI bubble is frothier than ever before. Well, even is spreading to Asia's market. So yesterday we talked about the US stocks, so US tech stocks, how they fall off the cliff. But today we are seeing Asia is taking an even bigger hit because US basically made a sneeze and Asia caught the cold. So we're going to dive into all the bearishness. Like, of course, it's not all doom and gloom. There's still some good things happening. For example, Trump accounts for kids. So the kid's going to get $1,000 to invest into S&P 500 into the US stocks market. Of course, it's going to be indirect boost to Bitcoin to so-called more risk on asset because when they make a little bit of money from stock market, the appetite is only going to get bigger, and perhaps a chunk of that money will flow into Bitcoin. But this is more the long-term play. In the short term, what I'm seeing is huge, so much bearish going on. So we're going to dive into the charts first of all. Let's actually start with I want to start with the weekly chart first, as I usually start with the shorter time frame, but today I want to do something different. So let's look at the higher time frame on the weekly chart. So Bitcoin right now is sitting at $86,000. And one thing I like to stress about is, of course, the Ichimoku cloud. I am seeing a huge resistance around this region because like last time when we were trading inside the cloud, that was back in January 2022, and we stay a good like a 3 months inside this cloud. So more than 3 months inside this cloud, this region. And I'm not saying that history will repeat, but it often rhymes. So this is one thing we could bear in mind as well. Very much likely this scenario will play out. In other words, we're going to spend a couple of weeks trading inside this region that will be between 85K to a top or even 100K. Because what happened in the yesterday live stream is that some of my viewers was asking me, okay, do you want to make a bet? Like, I assume Bitcoin would go to 100K by year end. And I mean, looking at the TA from a technical perspective, that is completely doable. But is that enough to justify and convince me this is a bull market like a lot of macro analysts out there seems to think? And I have a many compelling narratives and many compelling reasons to tell you that we are not getting out of the wood, at least in the coming weeks or even in the coming months. Like it looks to me, the bear market gonna last till at least Q3 or perhaps Q4 in 2026. So it depends on your time frame. Do you call that long term or short term? But at the same time, I'm of course very long term bullish on Bitcoin. We know the US government is getting in. There's a huge pile of cash trying to invest into Bitcoin. We know traditional money is here and they don't likely to buy Bitcoin and the next day to sell because they don't act like retail. So there's a lot of bullish catalyst, but at the same time, what I'm witnessing from the chart is that at the very least, like Q3 2026, it doesn't look like it's a very bearish, a very bullish time for me. It doesn't look like the narrative gonna flip so quickly, and especially one of the most bearish signal I'm seeing from the Ichimoku cloud is that the red line is trying to overtake the green line right here. So it's going to happen on in June next year. And of course, the Ichimoku cloud, why is it so good? Is because it's a leading indicator. So it kind of tells you where the trend is heading to. So if we apply the same pattern from last cycle, we spent like 3 months trading inside before dropping down. So how low we will go? One indicator we could look at, like as some reference to look at, is to actually pull up the 50-week moving average and a 200-week moving average. Because why I managed to call a bear market early, like, of course, that wasn't a popular opinion. I took a lot of heat, but like, looks like TA hasn't felt me overall. Like, one belief that I like is that narratives always follow price. I have talked about this like cycle top since October. So Bitcoin reaching an all-time high of 126K. And people call me crazy, but like I was doing my risk management and looks like it was right. Like TA again, once again, saved my life. The reason why I managed to do this because like there are 2 weekly candles close below the 50-week moving average. That is the confirmation of a bear market. And not to mention, on the daily when we were doing our live shows every single day, so on the daily candles of Bitcoin, Bitcoin was forming this like downtrend. And looks like there's a huge resistance on this downtrend line. And we never managed to get above and actually close above this trend line. So that's how I managed to call it. And of course, the 4-year cycle looks like it's so intact, but like even though all the compelling data is in front of our very eye, but people still like to believe what they want to believe instead of looking at the actual charts and the actual number. But that's fine. Looks like narratives once again follow price, and 50-week again. That's one confirmation. And as for how low we could go, let's actually pull up the Ichimoku cloud again, because right now we're just like trading inside this cloud. Last time we were like consolidating, and of course when we're consolidating, or maybe even we're gonna test 100K, like I won't be surprised to see 100K, but ultimately I will still be bearish in the short term, and I'm gonna tell you why. But like last time this happened, we trade inside and then we dip to 200-week. Like usually in a bear market, Bitcoin would find 200-week moving average as the support line, but last cycle it was like a little bit crazier because like we had like FTX and Silvergate or the bank crisis. So we actually went below the 200-week moving average, but general rule of thumb, the 200-week being the red line here is the reference we could look at. So if we apply the same metric, right now Bitcoin is at 86K and the 200-week is at roughly like 56K, somewhere around that. That means it's going to be another 35% correction. But again, like as I mentioned, maybe we're going to trade inside this region a little bit longer. So maybe for a few more weeks, because that's what happened in the previous cycles as well. So maybe we're going to consolidate and give some hopium to the bull, especially to the macro analysts out there who seems to think the best time is still ahead of us. And somehow we're going to make a new all-time high, even as soon as December 2026, but 2025. So what I'm seeing, like I could see from the chart in the coming months is that, okay, of course this 200-week gonna slightly rise because that's what it does. It smooths out the price of Bitcoin to more like a less crazy, less volatile line. So when this line slightly catch up and when we consolidate a little bit, before losing the SPAN B, so SPAN B being the red line of the Ichimoku cloud. So maybe we're going to consolidate for a few weeks before losing the support line, and then maybe we're gonna by then we'll find support at the 200-week moving average. So right now, maybe like 60K is a cycle bottom we could be looking at, but like nothing for certain. This is just a rough estimate. And again, according to the 4-year cycle, looks like we might perhaps find a cycle bottom in October 2026 if the 4-year cycle is being so intact. Because like there is like no argument there. We saw the cycle top, the all-time high, happen exactly on 6th of October 2025. So that is like the magic number, like the magic of math. And narratives do follow price because like I managed to call this early. Back then, I did not know whatever BS bearish narratives it could be, but the chart was telling me, like all these numbers were telling me and kind of like giving me a signal that, okay, maybe Bitcoin is losing the steam. But I didn't know what the narrative is going to be. But looks like today, on 18th of December 2025, there are so much bearishness. So all these like bearish narratives, for example, MSTL might get delisted from MSCI, like being one of the biggest index out there. What it means for MSTL to get delisted is that there will be billions of dollars of selling pressure. So, of course, like MSTL, when you look at the weekly chart, is already trying to approach the 200-week moving average. So that shows weakness. Right now, it's sitting at $160. So if MSTL do get delisted, if we hop onto Poly Market, there's now a 63% chance. So 63% of people think MSTL would get delisted. Of course, this is going to be going to perhaps send MSTL below 200-week moving average because that's what happened in a previous cycle as well. So we broke the 200-week moving average in May 2022. So if we have more bearishness as soon as, well, March 31st, then you know what to expect from MSTL. And MSTL is like a leverage play for Bitcoin. And I kind of like to use MSTL as another leading indicator because everything is like, MSTL is so sensitive to everything because it's leverage. So if that were to happen, that's a bearishness. So one bearish narrative. The second bearish narrative I am spotting from all these like news right now, because like people like to look for narratives to, okay, Jemmy, why did you manage to call this like a top without giving me any compelling evidence? Okay, right now I'm trying to give you some narratives. Like if you guys don't believe the charts, okay. So second bearish narrative I'm seeing is Tom Lee. So Tom Lee eventually gonna run out of money to buy ETH. Like I'm not saying okay they're gonna go bankrupt, but like maybe gonna slow down because it only makes sense. They are buying, of course. He's doing brilliant things for Ethereum. He's becoming an ETH bull. He's shilling his Ethereum on CNBC, all the traditional media. So, like, I have huge respect for the guy. But like, eventually, he's gonna have to slow down because, like, well, there is 1 billion cash for his company to maybe spare around. But like eventually, when he reaches target, which is he's pretty close, then Ethereum gonna see a maybe a, I wouldn't say a crash, but definitely slow down on the price action for Ethereum. So that's bearishness number 2. Bearishness number 3, I actually touched upon that yesterday. I talk about the carry trade. So the yen carry trade, we know tomorrow on Friday, Japan very likely they're gonna raise interest rate. And if you guys don't know carry trade, basically all these global investors, they manage to borrow really cheap yen and then they invest to some other markets, maybe US bonds or some US stock markets, basically more yield. They're looking for higher yield. And because they borrow so much yen, and yen right now, they are trying to, because like the Bank of Japan is trying to raise rate right now, it's definitely not a good sign we want to see as an investor, and it would definitely affect the risk on market, including Bitcoin and including MSTL. So bearishness number 3. And number 4 is, of course, AI bubble. We're going to talk about that in a bit. Like AI has never been so much uncertainty than ever before. AI and 5, we're going to talk about geopolitics. So there's so much uncertainty. And looks like Donald Trump is announcing like war, like almost going to a war. Like there isn't a physical war that being took place. But like looks like there are so much uncertainty, and everything point towards that Bitcoin might be more volatile and might dip lower. Again, I didn't know what the narrative's going to be back in October when we had this like cycle top all-time high. But the chart was like telling us there's some signal that, okay, maybe it's a good time to de-risk a little bit. And finally, the narratives are catching up. So yeah, the risk, I would say, has never been so obvious in front of my very eyes. So if you guys haven't the risk, I think it's a good time. So we were spending a lot of time on the weekly chart. Let's now actually hop on to the daily chart of Bitcoin. So as for the daily chart, like as I mentioned, Bitcoin never managed to break out of this downtrend. So we try to, let me zoom closer. This downtrend that we have been building since 6th of October, all-time high. And whenever people get excited, because like we drop from all-time high to maybe this low of 103, that was an 18% correction. And when we pump from 102 to 115, people got excited. Okay, that's a 12% pump. Turns out it was just a correction, but like however, we didn't manage to close above this downtrend. It was just a wick, so touching it doesn't count. I need to see a actual candle actually close above and break above this resistance for me to turn bullish once and for all. So all the evidence is in front of us, and even though like Bitcoin trying to get to maybe in the coming days 90K again, because like that's what happened when I was away in Abu Dhabi attending the event, and I didn't do a live stream for 2 weeks. And even before that, like I was telling my community, like don't get excited. Even Bitcoin trying to reach like 95K, like we need to close above this trend line. Otherwise, it was just noise. Okay, and looks like TA once again is working perfectly well. Okay, so that's for the general trend we have to break above, and so far we're still below. That's weakness number 1. Weakness number 2 that I want to say is this like RSI. Let's pull up the RSI. So weakness number 2 is that, okay, we had a nice little rally ever since 21st of November. So we're trying to build up that upward support. However, we broke out of that support. And more concerningly is that we broke out of that support from the RSI. So RSI went below the support line that was back in 12th of December. So just like last week. So this weakness number 2 from the daily chart. And weakness number 3 is that technically speaking, let me remove all the drawings. Technically speaking, any price below 108K, it is still technically in a bear market. The reason why this number is so important is because it was the previous all-time high and the previous support for quite a long time. That's why 108K, that's the magical number, because we found resistance, and then we found support here. So prior support is going to be our future resistance. Technically speaking, anything below 108K, that's a bear market. All right, so that's for daily. Let's all actually hop onto the hourly, because one thing I really want to stress about on the hourly is the manipulation. So guys, please stay away from leverage. And when you look at posts like this, so Bitcoin pumped 3,300 and liquidated $106 million worth of shorts in just 30 minutes, but then it dumped 3,400 and liquidated $52 million worth of longs in the next 45 minutes. Insane level of manipulation. So yeah, I mean, I'm not against of like shorting or longing the market. Longing is just like holding spot, right? But like I'm not against people trading, but please trade responsibly. Like when you look at an hourly chart, like look at this like huge wick. This is crazy. In just 1 hour, we went from 90K to 87K in just one hourly candle. And then we went below to as low as 85K in a matter of hours. So from 90K to 85K. Please like trade responsibly, no leverage in a volatile and uncertain market, especially this time. The last thing I want is to see my community get wrecked by manipulation, by market makers like this, because like there's no way this happens so quickly, and it happens so often, especially like recently. Like look at this chops, man. Like we're just like trading between 89K to 94K, and this chops is to wipe out all the positions in the market. Like you can pull you can trade responsibly and do risk management, because that's what I'm doing. Like I'm still pulling massive shots on, especially on altcoins, because I'm really bearish on altcoins. Like if you have been watching my content, you know my reason why I'm so bearish on altcoins. And so far my short positions have been printing for me, so it's been working really well, and using TA has been working really well in my favor. So like you could do risk management, you could pull a little bit of short, but like please stay away from leverage. Like even I'm not even pulling 1.5x leverage after seeing 1010. Like even 1.5x leverage on especially altcoins, you could get wrecked rather quickly. So manage your risk responsibly, don't use leverage, and yeah, hopefully we could learn one thing or two from this live stream. And we know there's so much uncertainty in the market. For example, US right now is took one of the toughest step against Venezuela so far. Donald Trump ordered a total blockade on all oil tankers going in or out of Venezuela if they are under US sanctions. This came right after US forces seized a Venezuelan oil tanker near the Caribbean. The US also labeled Maduro's government a foreign terrorist organization and demand that Venezuela return US owned oil assets that were taken years ago. And Venezuela answered by calling this move an act of war and order its navy to escort oil ships. Now you have basically US and Venezuelan ships facing each other in the Caribbean in a very tense situation. So why is the US doing this? Like the US says Maduro is using oil money around like $200 million per week to keep his regime alive. Many of these exports move through ghost tankers that hide their identity to dodge sanctions. Trump's goal is pretty straightforward, it's pretty simple. It's to cut off Maduro's money, force him out, and support the opposite leader, which is, of course, he's very friendly to the US. That's why Donald Trump is supporting him. This also fits into Donald Trump's bigger plan, which is to reclaim influence in Latin America, reduce migration pressure, fight drug networks, and also, of course, like the bigger plan here is to stop countries like Russia and China and Iran from growing its power in the region. Like some say they like what US is doing, but like others say like this war is completely stupid. Like this is the last thing the US wants, last thing American people want. But like technically speaking, the US is not officially at war yet, but the pressure is building. Venezuela has the world's largest oil reserves, and the US wants stable energy and fewer hostile regimes in the region. Donald Trump said Maduro is a dictator who rigged elections, shelters criminals, and works closely with Russia, Iran, and China. I mean, that is like the truth. The blockade is meant to hurt the regime without an invasion, but things could still go wrong rather quickly. And a quick background about Venezuela, because like I find the country very fascinating. Venezuela has more oil than any country in the world, like about 300 billion barrels. But somehow the country managed to stay extremely poor even till today. This is due to poor management, poor political parties in place. The reason why Venezuela is under so much distress is actually goes back to years ago. They have been relying on oil massively, like over reliance on oil. 95% of exports came from oil, but profits were never reinvested into the country. And there's like some bad economic policy, like price controls, money printing issue, because we know it's not exclusive to the US, and corruption caused shortages and hyperinflation. And a US sanction back in like since 2017, of course, it made things even worse for Venezuela. So this caused a massive crisis, like 7 million people left the country already. And between the US and Venezuela, the two countries actually had really good ties for most of the 20th century because Venezuela supplied cheap oil to the US. Things changed after the former president, Chavez, came to power in 1999. He aligned with Cuba, Russia, and Iran to attack basically say bad stuff about the US, and relations totally collapsed, especially under the current president of Venezuela, Maduro. The US even recognized the opponent as president in 2019. Today, between the US and Venezuela, there's no diplomatic ties, but Donald Trump believes the US should control more of the region's oil and stop China and Russia from stepping in. So there's actually no physical war yet, but there have been deadly incidents. Since August 2025, the US has done more than 26 strikes on ships linked to drug trafficking, and at least 95 people have died. There are no ground battles, but naval forces on both sides are getting closer. So a wrong move could escalate rapidly. So it could escalate really fast. And China, of course, like China is furious about this. Like as of like other countries' response, China is like very emotional the most because China's is Venezuela biggest backer. China has lent Venezuela over $62 billion. They have bought like 80% of Venezuela's oil exports and more than 600 cooperation deals with the country. So to China, the US blockade looks like the US is trying to cut off China's oil supply and block its influence in Latin America. So like this thing, like this geopolitical escalation, is not so much about US is trying to get cheap oil. Okay, that is maybe one of the reasons, but like mostly it's just like US versus China. That's the hidden message here. And of course, because of this news broke, there's a massive impact on the oil's price. Like oil price jumped like 1% because traders fear Venezuelan supply could drop. Even though the global supply is still rather strong, any threat near shipping lanes pushes prices higher. So this is one impact. The second impact is, okay, there's a price there is gold, and gold for the past year, it has really outshined Bitcoin. So like as a Bitcoin investor, like I think I am prone to feel a little bit of saltiness. Gold is close to its all-time high yet again. Right now, it's sitting at $43.27. And yeah, I mean, because of this, because of war break, people like to flock to so-called safe assets, not Bitcoin. Bitcoin fell slightly, like as I mentioned. Even though Venezuelans use crypto heavily, global investors still don't treat BTC as a war hedge like gold, at least not for the moment being. Well, I won't be surprised in the coming years when all these nations adapt Bitcoin and actually have a Bitcoin strategic reserve, then things will change. But like until now, Bitcoin is still taking a hit, especially when we have uncertainty around the globe right now. So, anyways, this is one of the narratives we have to cover. Like, just need to get out all the bearish narrative out there. The second one is, of course, AI. But like, before we dive in, let's take a little break, and I'll see you guys in about 3 minutes.
Security matters. Zappo Bank, the only way to bank your Bitcoin. Apply now at zappobank.com.
Some call me Chicken Little, others Bubble Boy. I'm a bit changed, but sounds familiar, right? Let me tell you a hard truth. The S&P isn't rising, the dollar's falling. That's the trick, monopoly money. It's ice melting by the second. Your savings, your salary, your time. Worth less every second. Everyone's using the wrong measuring stick. Switch the denominator. Price the S&P into Bitcoin. Hard, fixed, unprintable. Suddenly your unstoppable index, it's collapsing. And while you cling to dollars, well, Wall Street already switched. Before, you needed 2 brokers.
Still getting my ninja bonus though, right?
Plenty of spreadsheets. And my quant!
I hate this part.
I was right, and I'll be right again. If I were you, I'd thank me.
You know my name's Dave, right?
All right, guys, welcome back. As I mentioned, we're gonna now look at the AI bubble. Are we really in the bubbly territory? Should we be concerned right now? Because like the looks like the AI companies and most of them are not earning much revenue. So here's what I want to look at. I want to focus on Asia because yesterday's show I focused on the US stock market. And today I want to talk about Asia because Asian markets dropped again following a big sell-off in the US tech stocks the day before. So Japan, when you look at the Nikkei is of course the Japanese index. It fell like so in the past 5 days it fell 3%. And one of the biggest loser we have to look at is SoftBank. So SoftBank fell more than 7% during the day. This came right after the Nasdaq in the US. So if we take a look at Nasdaq, it fell from the past 5 days, it fell more than 3%, mainly because major AI companies dropped sharply that include Oracle, that include Broadcom, and Nvidia. Of course, like Nvidia, it hasn't been doing so well. Where's Nvidia? So right here, for the past month, it hasn't been doing so well. It dropped like more than 5% in the past month. So the story here is pretty simple. Investors are pulling money out of expensive tech and AI stocks and moving into safer sectors. What sort of safer sectors is, of course, none other than gold and silver. And oil rise a little bit, but like I doubt it has much to do with AI crash. And yesterday, US, of course, it crashed because of some like earnings that we didn't like to see, but Asia got hit especially hard because many Asian markets depend on tech supply chains. So let's take a look at Nasdaq again. Why Nasdaq fell so quite drastically? Because like 17th of December, which means yesterday, it was one of the worst day for tech in weeks. Oracle's earnings were the main trigger. The company said AI data centers are getting delayed because because of power shortages and infrastructure limits. This scared investors and made them worry about that the AI boom might be finally slowing down. Investors are now asking, can companies really keep spending more than $1 trillion a year on AI if profits are not coming in? A study from MIT said 95% of companies still do not make money from AI, and that's why the market reacted really strongly, and especially Asia. Asia moved almost exactly in line with US, but of course with a bigger swing. The MSCI Asia Pacific Index dropped again. And of course, when we're looking at Japan and South Korea, were hit hardest. SoftBanks dropped like 7%, as I mentioned. And China's market dipped on weak economic data. This shows one thing: Asia is deeply tied to the global AI cycle. When the US sneezes, Asia actually catches a cold. So how bad is the sell-off? Well, the drop is not a crash, but it is quite serious. Major AI and tech funds are down for the week. Some stocks have lost most of the gains, and Nvidia, as we were looking at, it was at a 3-month low. And for US pension funds, they've actually started selling US stock because of AI worries. For now, this looks like a big correction, not the end of AI, but the fear is really growing and volatility is really high. So, to address the question, is AI in a bubble? There are both sides of argument, I would say. Like, it really depends on whichever side you want to believe. So, I'll start with the argument that AI is in a bubble. So one of the most compelling argument from the bears is that the power problems in the US. US data centers are using huge amount of electricity, so already 4% of all national demand, and this would only double by at least double by 2030. If companies cannot get enough power, AI growth will slow. And many AI companies are not making any money per se. Most of the firms cannot turn AI tools into real profit. OpenAI itself is still losing money and may not be profitable for at least years. That's why Michael Barry is shorting AI very heavily. He's pulling a massive short on Palantir and also Nvidia. The reason why he would do such thing is because like what Microsoft has been struggling is actually to find more electricity to run those idle GPUs that they bought from Nvidia. So I know that the GPU is very expensive and it's very valuable, but the problem that you is experiencing is that isn't enough power, and turns out the GPU just like lying on the ground turned dusty. And simply there's just too much speculation. Like stock prices ran far ahead of real results. Many people bought AI stocks just because everyone else did. And as for the other side of the argument, like why some folks happen to think this is not a bubble, well, one really compelling evidence we couldn't ignore is that the entire US government cannot afford AI to fail. The White House is pushing hard, removing old rules, hiring like 1,000 AI experts, and making AI a key part of national growth. Like AI is tied very deeply to the US GDP because like US is not producing the actual physical goods, it's not exporting anymore, but instead they focus on high tech like AI. So AI, in other words, equal to US GDP. And big tech companies can still make real profit, and some of them are making real profit even if stock prices fall. Companies like Apple, Microsoft, Amazon, and Google, they actually have strong cash flow to support long-term AI investments. So if you ask for my own opinion whether AI is in a bubble or not, that's not gonna lie, that's a really tough one. So this week's sell-off, what it showcases that the AI sector is entering a more realistic phase, not a crash, but a tough reset. Some investors say this is a healthy move because it removes all the hype, but of course, others worry if companies slow spending on data centers, AI growth will take a hit. So why are we looking at this? Because for Bitcoin, this matter. If tech stocks fall, risk assets like BTC would often fall as well because as we know, Bitcoin is deeply correlated with Nasdaq, is deeply correlated with Nvidia. Investors are moving money to safer assets like gold and silver, but at the moment, it's still not Bitcoin. So if you guys were looking for some bearish narratives to support the charts that I was telling and predicting 2 months ago, here you go. That's some bearish narratives for all the macro analysts out there. So that's for AI, but there's some good news. Like for global news or finance news, it's not directly related to Bitcoin. What happened? Ray Dalio, of course, the billionaire who founded Bridgewater, he announced a $75 million donation to fund Trump accounts for about 300,000 children under the age of 10 in Connecticut. Each child would get $250 added to the account. This follows a much bigger pledge from Michael Dell, who earlier committed at least $6 billion to give $250 each to 25 million low-income children across the US. These are kids who were born before 2025, but like don't qualify for the federal $1,000 seed. So Ray Dalio, as he put it, uh, uh, he said this is about giving kids a financial head start and improving financial literacy. Social media reaction was quite mixed. Like some people praised the move, others say it shows just like how much America now depends on billionaires instead of government policy. Well, to me, it sounds extremely stupid because isn't that how capitalism works anyway? But who else joined? I'm glad you asked. So there are other donors included in the list. For example, BlackRock. Not sure if you heard of that name. BlackRock and BNY Mellon, Uber CEO, Charter Communications, they all joined the list. And not to mention Treasury Secretary, so being Scott Bessent, he's pushing really hard, he's shilling and basically asking more billionaires and corporations to join in, to donate more. And when I look at this news, actually, well, this happened a few months ago, but when the first time I heard of this news, I thought it was just like a dream, like it was some idea Donald Trump, like crazy idea Donald Trump is proposing. But turns out it is official law under the One Big Beautiful Bill that was passed in August this year. So there are key dates for us to look at. The IRS guidance release is like already happened. So on 3rd of December this year. And as for the actual accounts being open, it's going to be in July next year. So the structure is real. The rollout is happening for sure. But like how exactly does the Donald Trump account works? Once again, I'm glad you asked. The Trump account is a tax-deferred investment account for kids. So it's much similar to a mix between a 529 plan and a retirement account. For kids that qualify, basically they need to be under the age of 18 with a social security number, one account per child, and opened by a parent or a guardian. And how they got the money is that, okay, there will be $1,000 federal seed for babies born between 2025 to 2028. And there will be private contributions, so up to $5,000 per year. There will also be employer contribution, charities and states, so there will be unlimited contributions allowed. How they invest is so only in low fee US equity investment index, aka the S&P 500. No leverage, no crypto, no alternative assets. If the child wants to withdraw the money, they can do that until the age of 18. After that, it works like a traditional IRA, so tax on earnings, penalties for early withdrawals unless special cases apply. And it can roll over into the IRA at adulthood as well. As for the expectation of the ROI, $1,000 alone, it could grow to $5,800 by the age of 18. So that's pretty good. And max contribution could lead to over 300,000 over time if markets perform well. So this is ultra bullish for the stock market, both in the short term and medium term. The reason why, okay, you could be thinking, okay, the kid's gonna get the money at the age of 18, so it's gonna be a long-term play, right? Well, not exactly. Like every dollar contributed must go into US stock index funds. That means like huge force buying of the S&P 500 and the large cap index. All of this create steady demand for US stocks, especially large companies. And so some analysts predict that that would add at least 0.1% to annual GDP. And the design is really, really clever. It is a genius play, very much inflating the stock price in the most artificial way ever. So by forcing all contribution to go into US stock index, the system would have to pump the stock price. They would have to increase household wealth and raise GDP, aka boost corporate earnings and keep money flowing into funds dominated by firms like BlackRock. So in other words, they are kind of investing money to boost the performance, boost the stock price. And this money gonna hit the market immediately. Even though the kids cannot touch the money until they turn 18, the investment happens right away at the moment of contribution. So for Dow's $6 billion of investment, it could start entering the market in 2026, not when the kids reach the age of 18. So the timeline we're looking at is, of course, July 2026, accounts being open. For the federal, 1,000 state dollars are deposited after enrollment. Funds start buying index ETFs right away. This creates instant inflows to the stock market. Like kids do not control the money, but the money is already being invested. So this is a really genius play by Donald Trump just to push up the stock market. Like this again aligned with the chart because like what it shows is, well, at least Q3, at the very least, like Q3 2026, looks like BTC is still going to be in some distress, because still going to be underwater. But like after Q3, maybe, I don't know, Q4, things are going to get better. Like I'm seeing some bullish narrative like this, like the Trump account, kids investing in the S&P 500. Of course, they can't withdraw the money, but like when stock price go up, it always some bullish correlation to the BTC price as well. So that's one. And the second one is, of course, Jerome Powell being replaced in May or in June. So whoever replaced Jerome Powell, he's going to cut interest rate and global liquidity might finally unlock. So of course, Bitcoin investors should really care about this. And there's like the wealth effects matter quite a lot. It's a very smart way to build wealth and boost the economy, like one of the smartest moves by Donald Trump, I would say. And before we move on to the next part, there's some other good news. So Coinbase stock trading goes live and letting US users to purchase the equities with USDC. But before we dive in, let's take a quick break and I'll see you guys in a few minutes.
Security matters. Zappo Bank, the only way to bank your Bitcoin. Apply now at zappobank.com.
Some call me Chicken Little, others Bubble Boy. I'm a bit changed, but sounds familiar, right? Let me tell you a hard truth. The S&P isn't rising, the dollar's falling. That's the trick. Monopoly money. It's ice melting by the second. Your savings, your salary, your time. Worth less every second. Everyone's using the wrong measuring stick. Switch the denominator. Price the S&P into Bitcoin. Hard, fixed, unprintable. Suddenly your unstoppable index, it's collapsing. And while you cling to dollars, well, Wall Street already switched. Before, you needed 2 brokers.
Still getting my ninja bonus though, right?
Plenty of spreadsheets. And my quant!
I hate this part.
I was right, and I'll be right again. If I were you, I'd thank me.
You know my name's Dave, right?
All right, guys, welcome back. As I mentioned, we're now going to take a look at Coinbase, which is one of my favorite companies out there. And so far, it's doing pretty well. And of course, it's been included in the S&P 500 since I've been talking about that since 2023. So it's been doing pretty well for me. Coinbase made one of the biggest announcements ever. Basically, US users can now trade stocks directly inside the Coinbase app, commission-free, using either USD or even stablecoin like USDC. This means you can now buy US equities and crypto in the same place with one portfolio view. Coinbase is now positioning itself as an everything exchange, not just crypto, not just stocks, but a full financial platform that blends both worlds together. This update came as part of Coinbase system update event, which also included prediction market through Kalshi, like we talked about prediction market a little bit. They also included perpetual features, AI investing advisors, integration with Solana's Jupyter stacks, early plans for tokenized stocks that may one day allow 24/7 global trading. So that's pretty good. After the news, of course, like Coinbase, when we look at the stock price, it went up a little bit, like not significant, because like ultimately Coinbase is still related to crypto, and crypto right now is in a bear market. So Coinbase rose a little bit in after hours trading. Right now, users can buy a select list of the US stocks and ETFs using USDC. But Coinbase say they will expand this to thousands of US stocks over the next few months. So of course, there's some key features coming. What we're looking for the most is the 24-hour, 24/7 trading on eligible symbols, stocks and crypto store in one app, and also tokenized equities and stock perpetuals with up to 20x leverage. Like these are not live yet, but is on the roadmap of Coinbase. And this is basically Coinbase's answer to Robinhood, but with crypto added on top. So I hate to break it to you if you guys are not from the US. Like you can't try out this feature yet because it's only exclusive to US users who pass KYC, so full KYC verification. Non-US users like us, like me in Hong Kong, we're not eligible at launch. International users will have to wait for stock perpetuals or tokenized equities expected in early 2026, which may allow global 24/7 exposure without touching US security laws. So this is a really big milestone for Coinbase, I would say. Like this matters so much because like Coinbase is the first major US crypto exchange to offer stock trading. Coinbase is now competing directly with Robinhood or Fidelity or other fintech giants with crypto included. And because users can purchase equities with USDC, USDC just became a true trading currency. This is a big step toward merging crypto and TradFi together. And because it's crypto native, like we are looking forward to that 24/7 stock trading because like being in crypto, we always take things for granted. Like I didn't like sometimes when I trade stock, I find it really annoying that you can't trade on weekend and you have to wait for certain hours to just to trade your stocks on weekdays. So having this like tokenized stocks, it makes a lot of sense to me, and it's definitely the beginning of on-chain TradFi. So, anyways, like long story short, this is a big win for USDC, for TradFi to crypto integration and future on-chain finance. So good stuff. Well, moving on to more good stuff that I prepare for you guys is Putin. Like Putin is doing amazing thing, and they have made a historic announcement. The king of Bhutan said the country will commit up to 10,000 BTC, which is worth around $1 billion to support the long-term growth of the city that they're building. What type of city is this? Like, I can't pronounce this word. So, mindfulness city. This is a new special economic region the country is building. This is the largest Bitcoin pledge ever made by a country. Putin is not planning to sell the BTC. Instead, they will use it for things like collateralized loans, treasury management, yield strategies. The goal is to keep the BTC while still using to finance development. So Britain, if you guys didn't know, is actually one of the countries held most of the Bitcoin. Britain's government Bitcoin stash is estimated between 6,000 BTC to over 11,000 BTC. They earned most of this from state-backed BTC mining back in 2019 using excessive hydropower, so clean energy only. And the king, he said that the 10,000 BTC pledge is a generational investment meant to help every citizen in the country benefit from the new city. Even landowners in GMC, so this city, will be treated like shareholders. Putin did sell a little bit of BTC, so like more than 500 BTC. That was back in July this year when BTC went above 120K. Looks like it was a really good call. But overall, the strategy has been keep accumulating Bitcoin. They're not trying to dump Bitcoin overall speaking. So as of this city, GMC is Putin's new mega project launched in 2024. It covers like thousands square miles, roughly 10% of the entire country. So this thing is massive. The idea here is to build a modern economic zone that still fits with Putin's famous philosophy of the gross national happiness. So this city will focus on finance, technology, green energy, healthcare, sustainable agriculture. So everything innovative and green, that's what they're trying to build, this like brand new whole city. And when it comes to Putin, the history with Bitcoin goes all the way back. Like as I mentioned, they earn most of their Bitcoin from mining, like state-backed mining back in 2019 using hydropower, so clean and cheap energy. They managed to mine at least 55 BTC every single week. That was like back in 2019. That's around like $3 to $4 million per week. So of course, because of the mining activities, their Bitcoin reserve grew really fast. They over like $1 billion by mid 2025. Bitcoin now makes up at least 28% of Bhutan's GDP. That's an insane number for a country. And they are also actively pushing other crypto innovations. For example, tourists, if they want to pay with crypto, they are more than welcome to do that. They could use DK Bank or Binance Pay, and they are also pushing the gold-backed token on Solana, as well as the national digital identity system on Ethereum, and over 100 local businesses accept crypto. Britain is already like way ahead of most countries out there when it comes to sovereign crypto strategy. So of course, crypto community love that so much. Like people praise Putin for being bold, early, and long-term focused. Like pulling moves like this, it could really push other countries to consider Bitcoin as a strategic reserve and increase global BTC adoption. It also further validates the idea of using BTC for developing some like finance rather than just investment alone. So that's some good stuff, but like in a bear market, good stuff like this. So bullish news, good news, it doesn't move the needle, or sometimes it will like crash a little bit more. That's how it works, but I'm completely okay with the bear market because, as I always mention, wealth is being generated in a bear market, while bull market is a lot of fun. Like bull market is great for trading. Bear market is where the real money is being made. All right, so that's pretty much all I want to cover in today's show. Before you go, make sure to follow us on Twitter. So my personal Twitter is GemGemCrypto_IO. And make sure to give us a follow on RoxomTV Twitter as well. So it's really easy. So at RoxomTV, because we have regular updates covering not only Bitcoin news, but like about global news, about geopolitics, about macro. So there's so much valuable content you wouldn't want to miss out. Make sure to give us a follow. Anyways, my show is Monday to Friday, starting at 3 a.m. Eastern Time to 4:30 a.m. Eastern Time. If you don't manage to watch that live, I don't blame you because my time zone is weird. But like the replay is also available on both channels. So being my own channel, GemGem Crypto YouTube channel, and also on RoxomTV YouTube channel. Thank you so much guys for watching, and I'll see you guys in the next one.